And Paul, if you'd like to go ahead and share yours while I read your introduction. All right. So Paul Sutherland of the American Philosophical Society is our next presentation. He'll be presenting simultaneous audio collection processing and digital library uploading using Python, ArchivesSpace, and Islandora 8. The American Philosophical Society recently received digitized audio from a vendor of several large unprocessed audio collections. They needed to find a way to simultaneously process the collection in ArchivesSpace, upload to their digital library, and associate the two with minimal duplicated effort and tedious copy and pasting. Paul will describe a new internal workflow for archivists processing audio collections. The workflow involves using Python libraries to facilitate creating and uploading CSV and Excel files, validating metadata, retrieving information from file directories, and extracting and updating audio file metadata. The process is designed so that each of these steps can be applied individually and combined into other workflows. Paul, take it away.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me correctly?
Yes, we can hear you and see your slides. Yeah.
Great, fantastic. Thank you for introducing me. It's good to be here. So I just want to get right into the talk. So we've received from an audio vendor a large amount of recently digitized audio from collections that were unprocessed. When they came in, all we did was assigned carrier numbers. Assigned the carriers unique identifiers with no further metadata created so far. We just prioritized getting the files, and we want to simultaneously create finding aids and upload content to our DAMs, which is Islandora 8. ArchivesSpace and Islandora 8 quite nicely both provide CSV data ingest options. For ArchivesSpace, that's the bulk import archival object CSV, and for Islandora 8, that's Workbench. This data is siloed, and much of this metadata is the same or similar, but there is some unique metadata needed for each of these processes. So what we want to avoid, which has been a hang up here for a while, is in these silos having duplication of effort between metadata sheets, between the two spaces that we're working with, any redundant copy pasting, any errors, especially when we need to pass data to colleagues to get the data processed, or if we need to clean ingested data after the fact. And also getting overwhelmed by the size of these sheets. Both of these CSVs can be quite massive, and some elements fairly confusing. So we want to sort of reduce the complexity here. There's a broader context here, which is that this is just for one need in one department at our archive at the American Philosophical Society, which is in Philadelphia. We wanted to make a process that's extensible to others at the institution. We recently migrated from Islandora 7 to Islandora 8, which was major also that involved a large amount of data cleanup. In that process, which has taken a long time, we have a backlog of hundreds of thousands of pages of manuscript scans, as well as other forms of media waiting to be uploaded. Many of these include existing metadata within ArchivesSpace that needs to be converted to Workbench CSV files. So it's a similar sort of challenge. We don't want to be copy pasting as we do this. One answer that we come up with here, at least in our department, is to use Python for this. It has very good CSV manipulation libraries. It has libraries to aid other processes, which I'll get into. We have some staff experience here. I'm the one making these Python scripts. I want to say at the beginning that I'm not a coder. I learned Python for my music hobby like a few years ago, and I've just been sort of hacking away at it until I understand enough of the work that I have to do here. And it's relatively easy to read for a language. So the goal is to have a single minimal spreadsheet that can just be filled in once by the user, and then all manipulation of data, all the manipulation of data into the spreadsheets the various spreadsheets that we need, can be handled by Python scripts, and a simple step-by-step workflow that the other staff can pick up. So the first thing I did with this is to sketch out sort of the general flow of data, from where data exists, where data might exist, and to a spreadsheet and to the various files that we need. I had to identify fields that we'll use in Islandora Workbench and ArchivesSpace's bulk import archival objects CSV, and compare the fields, because they're often very similar, but not always the same. They often have slightly different data, but in ways that are that you can get Python scripts to just work on them, rather than having to hand edit them. So here's a very early sketch of the flow of data and some type of scripts that I made. This was a spreadsheet where I was comparing the fields between the two CSVs, or the 3 CSVs rather, that I needed to create in this. Over here we have what becomes the column names for the spreadsheet that we create. Then here we have the various column names in the CSVs that we create from that. And then information about what the data itself is, and then any transformations that have to happen. This is all sort of very sketch notes. The full extent of this comes out in the code itself. And so this is the workflow that I came up with for this, which is, first you're preparing the CSV files. So we've got all these audio files that we've received from the vendor. We give them component unique identifiers as their names. That's all we have. So we pre-populate a spreadsheet that uses these identifiers. We then fill out the spreadsheet with all the data, with all the metadata that we can add. So listening through to the files, looking on the carriers themselves for any handwriting, that sort of thing that we can fill out. We fill it out into the relevant fields, most of which will be things that will be familiar to ArchivesSpace users, and run a validation script on this, just to make sure that we've filled everything out right. And then to generate from this, what ends up being 3 CSV files. I haven't talked about MP3 tag yet, but basically this is, if we're creating audio files, we also want to add tags. They're called ID3 tags, and these are if an audio file ever gets lost, or somebody downloads it and they get it later and they don't know what it is, this will tell you some basic information about what the recording is, for them. So this is another part of the process. And then the next steps of the workflow are applying these CSV files. So you get these CSVs, you tag the WAV files that you have, the audio files, with these with the CSV that's created from the metadata that you created. Unfortunately, this can't be done in a Python library as far as I can work out. It works for MP3 files. There's libraries for that, but there's not libraries for WAV files that I can find. If anyone knows of one, that would be great, because this is an annoying extra step with an extra program that we have to use. Then we run the Islandora Workbench process, which is uploading the digital files to Islandora 8. From this, we receive a list of nodes that were created as part of this process, which can be used to create links from ArchivesSpace. So then we update the ArchivesSpace's CSV, the bulk import archival objects CSV, with these newly created nodes automatically, and those and in ways that then become fully fledged out digital objects in the several fields that require this. and then we ingest the ArchivesSpace CSV. And then we're done. We have a full audio collection in ArchivesSpace and Islandora with any custom note, any sort of notes that we wanted to add, any restrictions, all that kind of thing. We established in just in the spreadsheet that we created. Some good principles found for doing this with Python. I mean, these are good general principles for Python, but like as I say, this is relatively new to me. I'm still learning, and this project is the first. It's sort of the most complicated project I've taken on in Python. So these have been very useful. Splitting codes into lots of individual functions, also lots of individual files, where the functions just do one thing to one piece of data, or one thing to two pieces of data that you have to say combine or something like that. Function names should explain exactly what they do. So the function seconds to HHMMYY will take an input of seconds and will output it as a HH:MM:YY, which is like a nice extent for dealing with audio files. Distinguish between code that the user will run directly and code that's run internally by other code. Python tends to use the underscore prefix to indicate internal scripts. I might not be doing that quite right, but it looks neater for sure. Use well-documented and maintained libraries. So that sometimes involves some searches because people can create new libraries all over the place with GitHub. Sometimes they're good ones, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And document everywhere in comments, in README files, and in like full documentation for the for any users and for any other staff who might want to work on this. Finally, I'm just going to run through a few libraries and functions. So from reading and writing to CSV and XLSX, which is Excel files, there's an internal to Python CSV module, which is quite basic. There's an XLSX writer, which is very, very good for Excel. And there's pandas, which can do both. But I'm finding that XLSX is actually a little more limited in this. So I think I'm going to end up using a combination of all of these. Here I've got some functions that are basically validating against custom control vocabularies that we have. These control vocabularies I store in a CSV file. Here you have one on the right-hand side. You can see one for the ISO 639 language codes and their names. So the names are first, and then the language code. This way, the files are very easily updatable if we need to change a value. You can just open the CSV file in any text editor, add a value, take away a value, and then save it, and then it's back. It's there again, and we have this available internally. So here's a few scripts that basically take in an input, say, is this value in this CSV file? And if not, then it returns an error. So this is for when a user is like thinks their data is fine, and then you check. Getting the audio duration from a WAV file is very easy. This is the function for that. It takes a file. It uses the mutagen library. It gets the length of that file and it returns it. And then you turn it into an extent, which you can use sort of a custom extent field in ArchivesSpace for this to represent it as hours, minutes, and seconds. Validating extended date time format is quite easy in itself. This is an extended version of the regular ISO format, but I did need to do some further validation to make it work, to make it reduced to see where my dates are good for ArchivesSpace as well. Linking and splitting strings, splitting text. You join strings together. You can use regular expressions, which is the whole thing, but they can be quite simple. Here I've got one that just takes off everything before the hyphen in a string because I want to use that in some way. And then here I just have a screen showing like this is most of my working folder. You see these 4 files called CNAIR audio. These are the 4 files that the user would run. And they import other libraries that I've created, other files from the same directory. For future improvements, this isn't finished yet. This is very close to being finished, but we don't have the everything in place to be able to test it yet. I want to be able to use this data, as I said, from existing ArchivesSpace data. Currently, the way to do that is using the bulk update spreadsheet. As far as I understand, that's actually going to be sort of integrated into the ArchivesSpace core code soon. So I'll have to adapt that. But there will be a way. I want a way to transform that into a Workbench CSV. Add validation for every field. There's a lot of Workbench fields and ArchivesSpace fields. That's just going to take a long time, but I think that's worthwhile. And having spreadsheets with drop-down fields that people can select from. Again, that's just a little bit more complicated. I just have to learn these Excel libraries a bit more. Feel free to. I'm not putting my code up at the moment. I may put my code up on GitHub at some point. I have to talk to other staff, but feel free to email me if you have questions about this or want to see the code later once it's finished. And that's all I have. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Great timing. We have 4 minutes for questions. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or I can read anything that comes through in the chat. But thank you so much for that. Michelle says it's amazing and would love to see the code when it's finished. Then she'll reach out.
Cool, please do. Thank you.
Question from Corey. Do you expect to write or are writing unit tests for your Python functions?
So my limited Python knowledge, I understand unit tests to be where you're testing. You sort of have a core, like a central piece of code that you can run to make sure that everything is working. Is that right?
I don't think Corey is able to unmute himself.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much a standard set of tests to run against test data.
I have something in the works along that line. It's not going to be as neat as a unit test, but I do have a testing file that I'm running against every function that I'm doing. I will need to have something more robust for when we sort of make updates. And also one thing I didn't know is that to avoid like conflicts with where the output CSV files are stored and where the input files are stored. I'm having at the moment having everyone who's going to use it copy this to their local drive, so that they can run it by themselves. That's not perfect, but that's going to work for the small number of people who are going to be working with this code at this stage. So versioning, unit tests, things like that, may be down the line, but I'm not sure that something that's like so specific to just a few of us is really going to need this at this point. But yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Great. Yeah. We are at about time. There's no other questions in the chat. I'm speaking slowly in case one pops up, but otherwise, yeah, thank you so much, Paul. That was great. And we're going to go ahead and move on to our next and last session.